Hi, it's Jill Foster here with Shimmerz Paints, and today I will be making a card, and I will be doing some loose watercoloring using Shimmerz Paints and the Vibez sprays. And here's a look at the card that we'll be painting today. It's a really fun technique that adds a lot of depth and texture to the card design without a lot of layers or bulk. So I'm using the Vibez sprays, and these are an iridescent water-based spray, and they have a really vibrant color like the name implies. And I'll also be combining these with the Shimmerz Paints, and these have a really nice, beautiful, almost like a chunky glitter or shimmer to them. I'll also be using these penny black stamps and dies, and all of the Shimmerz colors of paints and sprays, as well as the stamp numbers and names, will be listed at the end of the video with all of the supplies used throughout. So to begin, I'm going to stamp my image onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. I'm using StazOn ink so that I can add lots of water and the paints and there won't be any bleeding of the ink. And I'm going to stamp this image repeatedly along the bottom of this watercolor paper. And this is a way I like to get a little extra use out of my stamps, is just to repeatedly stamp them, varying the height to create like a field of flowers to color in. I'll just get one more little bit up here on the corner. Now I'm ready to begin painting. I'm going to start by adding a layer of color using the Vibez sprays, but instead of spraying them on, I'm going to spray them onto my acrylic block and create a palette of color. So first I just rolled them between my hands to mix up the shimmer with the paint color. And then I'm just going to spray them right onto this acrylic block. And I just put a piece of paper underneath there so that you could see the colors. They are listed at the end of the video, but I am using the Razzle Dazzle Berry, Rolling in the Hay, Sunset Strip, Grape Escape, and Jenny B Blue. If you were worried about the colors sort of blending into each other like they did on my acrylic block, you can go ahead and spray them onto a palette that has like a little cup so that they don't move around. But I didn't really mind because I could mix them as well. So first I just wet down the flowers with plain water, and then I'm dropping in the color from the palette and letting the water sort of bleed that color out into the tips of the flowers. Now these flowers are drawn real sketchy, so I wanted the watercolor effect that I had to be really loose looking watercolor, sort of match the style of image. So by putting that water down first and then dropping in the paint and letting the water bleed out the color, it just naturally gives it that loose look. And then if needed, I can go back with more water from the tip of the petal down and blend it. So you could really stop there if you wanted a light pastel look, and it has that wonderful shimmer of the Vibez. I wanted to darken things up and add even more texture, so I'm going to use the Shimmerz Paints. I'm using just the back of my paintbrush to stir that. You don't have to add any water to these to activate, just stir them up and they're ready to go. And they have beautiful, sort of a thick, chunky glitter that looks awesome when it dries. It's very subtle, but it's just beautiful. So I'm putting that color down towards the center of the flowers, and then I'm going back with water to blend it outwards towards the tips of the petals. So this color is Wed Wagon, which is a really great color. And here again, I'll just show you, I'm wetting that down. Then I'm adding the Shimmerz Paints. You can see the water sort of pulls that out and blends for you. And I can keep adding more color as needed. And at the tip of the petals, you have that Vibez painting that we did for the first layer, and then towards the center is the Shimmerz. And so there's a variation in the amount of shimmer on each flower as well. I just followed that same technique for all of the flowers. Now for my background, I'm first wetting it down. And now I'm dropping in the Shimmerz Paints. I'm kind of pouncing my paintbrush on there, tipping the watercolor paper and letting the paints drip down and bleed, adding more water so that they move a little bit easier. And here I'm using the Golden Wheat and the Wed Wagon colors. They really blend together nicely to get a rich orange too. I especially like, because I had torn the edge on the top here, when this dries, it gets a really cool effect on that torn edge. I could see using that for a lot of borders and painting it with these Shimmerz Paints on cards and using that technique again. I like to start light and then add more color, so you'll see that as I go I get a little bit braver with my color, but you know, you can always add more, and so that's a great way to start, is just to start light. I'm also spritzing there with just water and letting it drip down. Now I'm just adding a touch of the Jenny B Blue Vibez, and then I will also add some of the Celery Shimmerz Paints at the bottom. So I'm mixing that in with water. And now this entire background will also have a really nice shimmer. One thing I love about the shimmer with all of the paints and sprays from the Shimmerz lines is they don't lose the color intensity with the shimmer. So sometimes you have shimmery products but the color intensity doesn't remain. It's almost too shimmery. These are just right. You have great shimmer but still the bold colors, which I love. And I just played around with that. I used a baby wipe to dab it up if I got too much, and I also added some splatters up there to the sky, and just dabbing up with a baby wipe to lighten those. To finish off the card, I stamped the sentiment, added some punched and die cut butterflies, and mounted it to a note card that had also been stamped with the music note background. And coming up here will be a close-up view, and you can get a little bit better look at the beautiful shimmer and texture that those paints provide. It's even more pretty in real life. I wish you could see it too. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you place an order with Shimmerz, to be sure to mention my name, Jill Foster, in the Notes to Merchant section so you can get free paint. This also lets us know that you enjoyed today's video and would like to see more. And here is a list of all the supplies used in the creation of today's card.